Trade is on the top of the minds of so many Americans and everyone around the world right now. To help us break down all of this information, I want to welcome Andrew Schmertz. He's our U.S. business editor, and City College of New York economics professor Peter Chow. His research focuses on international trade and economic development. So, Professor Chow, I want to start with you. You believe that these tariffs, the exact products, they're the wrong ones. You don't believe that aluminum and steel should have these tariffs imposed on them.
Well, first of all, I understand that the sector-specific tariff usually is based on the political considerations rather than the economic rationale, all right? And I must say that I'm sympathetic with unemployed people in those, areas which are dominated by the steel industry and aluminum industry. Nevertheless, if we want to collect the trade imbalance, which are from the largest country, the country which has the largest trade deficit is China. But on the steel and aluminum, China is not the largest exporter. The largest exporter of steel is Canada.
So because China is not the largest exporter of steel, and it's in fact Canada, you believe that this action is misplaced?
Well, I think President Trump may have some different mindset by impose the tariff on steel, which Canada is the largest exporter. He want to put some leverage on Canada as well as Mexico. Mexico is the fourth largest exporter of the steel to the U.S. For those countries to negotiate or renegotiate the NAFTA much more seriously, all right? I think you say you got to engage in negotiation. Take it or break it.
Do you think this is really about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which the president has railed against for years?
I think the production structure, the manufacturing structure between U.S., Canada, or Canada and Mexico are highly tied with each other or one another. So therefore, that if the United States want to take dramatic actions to terminate the NAFTA, I'm sure there are many, industry in the United States will be also, affect negatively.
Does this raise the ear more of the EU that he carves out Canada and Mexico, and the EU says, well, wait a minute, maybe this is really targeting us then?
I think, U.S. and the EU has more to talk in the sense that the U.S. and the EU has no trade deal or no treaties at all. And particular country like Germany is one of the largest countries with a trade surplus against the United States. So to some extent, the tariff on steel and alumina is trying to have an overall strategy. All right, it may or may not correct the overall trade deficit.
So it may not correct the overall trade deficit, but you believe it will do what?
I believe it will give those trading partners a different mindset. Say we got to deal with some of the serious questions which has been postponed for a long time.
Interesting. So you believe that this is a ploy to really convince those trading partners that now is the time to act, or we're going to do something more. That's the bigger overall goal.
Because the U.S. has been running trade deficit for decades, right? And of course, it has never been so sizable as it is now. Therefore, this pending issue got to be collected as what President Trump said. We do it reciprocally.
But what's wrong with trade deficits? It's generally kind of good for American consumers, right?
Actually, most of the trade economists don't worry too much about the trade deficit. I should point out one thing. Much of the trade deficit in the United States is because those exports are running by the U.S. multinational corporation overseas. In other words, if you look at the U.S. import and the export structure, roughly about 30% or higher of those products will sell back to the United States by U.S. company overseas.
Well, I want to highlight that because that's a very important point. You were saying that the companies that are partially responsible for this trade imbalance are actually owned by Americans overseas,
Right.
and that's a big factor that's not being considered.
Right, but this has some effect in terms of the operation for the U.S. multinational corporation to tell them that I can continue shipping the final product back to the U.S. Because that is a subject to public scrutiny, under President Trump's policy.
Major corporations are very much against this. Is that part of the reason? Because they're going to get hit for doing exactly what you're saying.
Yes, because number one, that they operate their business overseas because of the cost advantage. But now, I should point out one thing: the tax cut, the tax cut, the corporate income tax, which will be implemented this year, will have a significant effect on the investment decision for many of the American companies. Right? They were saying, hey, now I don't have to pay 39% of the income tax. I only pay 20%. So if they want to further make an investment, they will think about that. Instead of invest overseas, they will invest domestically or invest more in domestic industry, which will create more jobs for American workers.
Now, speaking about those jobs, we don't have very much time, but how much money would American consumers have to spend in order to protect one of those jobs? What's the math here?
Okay, this was the math from Peterson Institute for International Economics. They did a study on the cost and the benefit of the protection on the steel. In order to keep one job for the steel worker, American consumer as a group total has to pay $360,000 a year.
For each job?
For each job in the steel worker. So there are some other ways, there's some better way to help the unemployed steel worker rather than tariff.
Thank you so much, Professor Chow. We really appreciate your insight.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I enjoy it.